into our bougie, baddie, Barbie, the real test. No matter how you feel about Toni Childs, one thing about Toni Childs is Toni Childs did not play when it came to herself. Now, some people may view her as being cocky, but I feel Toni Childs was that chick that knows what she wants and what she deserves, and she's not going to settle for less. Let's get into our good girlfriend, Toni Childs. Y'all know Toni Childs is a mood, a vibe, and is always down to give the girls a good ass read. Toni Childs, played by the talented, gorgeous Jill Marie Jones, is the bougie Barbie of the bunch. Toni is an entrepreneur. She started Toni Childs Realty out of the mud, and there are a few adjectives we could use to describe Toni. She is sophisticated, she is savvy, she is sociable, she's misunderstood, she is very confident and will not take no for an answer. Toni has this philosophy that whatever she has her eyes on, she is determined and will succeed to get it, no matter what. Let's not forget, Toni was also a hustler. Did she have champagne dreams with a 40-ounce bank account? She did, but remember, she was also the smart realtist who convinced her real estate agent mentor, Anthony, to invest in Toni Childs Realty after brainstorming a bomb-ass business plan. Toni always thought on her feet because there was no way in hell she was going to return to Fresno. Born and raised in Fresno, Toni lived with her parents, Veretta and Eugene, on the family farm, but Veretta's drinking fueled her to leave. Toni, having grown up what she deemed poor, scared her to death, making her yearn for more. Let's keep it a buck. You really couldn't be mad at Toni for wanting to leave that lifestyle behind in search of greener pastures, you know? And so with that being said, Toni Childs, man eater, was in full effect. And Toni was about caviar wishes, champagne dreams. Therefore, she wanted opulence, she wanted the glamour, she wanted the fashion. That meant Toni most definitely lived outside of her means, basically robbing Peter to pay Paul and Mary just so she could say she lived in a bomb-ass condo, wore the latest fashions, and driving right out of her range with that Range Rover that she did beg Joan to pay her car note a time or 10. But I mean, that's just Toni Childs, y'all. Let's keep it real. Toni was just about the glamorous life, and she most definitely lived by the philosophy of fake it until you make it. Y'all remember when she talked about how she doctored her transcripts to get into UCLA? So we couldn't expect anything less from Toni. Also, having that type of philosophy, that meant that Toni Childs' man had to be doing better than she was. Let's just put it out there. You guys remember the love of her life, the dusty one, Greg, the starving artist who was content with just being a tortured, starving artist. And Toni, although she was in love with Craig, y'all know Toni was not about that struggling life, seeing that she grew up struggling. Y'all remember how pissed she was when Greg got some paint on that duvet cover and how she went off. And she just wasn't having it. And that was one of the reasons why Toni, who was filled with lust, when she laid her eyes on Maya's surgeon, Dr. Clay Spencer, she went after him immediately. Not so much that she was in love with him. She was just in lust with Clay because of the financial stability that he had to offer. He was also pretty good looking too. So Toni put the love that she had for Greg aside and she cheated. She laid down with Clay, but you guys also know with that came the consequences of catching chlamydia. So my question to Toni would be, was it worth it risking the love of your life, but also risking your health by sleeping with not one, but two men unprotected in one night? So it's kind of like, damn, Toni, you could see why people would put you in the gold digger trifling / category. Let's not forget, Toni also was mesmerized by the flawless engagement ring that Clay presented to her on Mulholland Drive. You guys remember how he proposed and she was so excited, not because she was in love with Clay, but it was just like, whew, I don't have to struggle anymore. I got somebody that's going to take care of me. I can live the life that I deserve to be living. And with that, again, Toni made the biggest mistake of her life and jeopardized her relationship with Greg. And you guys know what happened with that. Joan slipped up telling Greg about Toni's infidelity. He broke up with her. You guys remember the whole trip to the islands and the fallout that Toni and Joan ended up having. So, of course, Toni and Greg ended up getting back together, but it was Greg's revenge to get back into Toni's good graces and pretty much do to her what she had done to him. So that was trifling within itself. So following Toni's relationship with Greg, she had to go on her own spiritual journey, and she ended up meeting Todd, another doctor. Todd just so happened to be a plastic surgeon. You guys remember how Toni met Todd? Toni was going through this thing where she was just feeling older, and then Joan discovered that Toni was 32, where Joan was turning, and Joan was 30. So Toni was going through this whole, I'm gonna say midlife crisis, but sis, you weren't middle-aged. So Toni was going through this thing where she just felt like she needed to just, preserve her pretty. So she went to a Botox party, got some botched ass Botox, and y'all remember the scene where Maya asked her if she ever considered joining the Kabuki theater because Toni's eyebrows was, them eyebrows was spooked, dude. They was messed up real bad. So that's how Toni ended up meeting Todd. So Toni, again, I'm gonna say, was in lust. She and Todd, they never had any type of chemistry, in my opinion. Now, they did flirt, and Todd, I would say Todd was having feelings for her, but Toni, again, being the person that she was and holding a certain type of standard, she was just flat out like, I don't date short men. And so, of course, that offended Todd. But, the girlfriends told her, hey, Toni, you got to stop being so superficial. Look past that. I just feel like while Toni was playing the cat and mouse game with Todd, they never got an opportunity to get to know one another. Toni never got to vet Todd. Todd never got an opportunity to vet Toni. And I feel like if she would have vetted Todd, she would have realized that he was in debt. $750,000 worth of debt, and finding that out while planning during their wedding weekend was when Toni actually found out that information, because she had the $10,000 a night compound, and he pretty much let her know like, yo, you can't be doing all this spending. So it just got kind of crazy. So you guys know Toni and Todd end up getting married. They have a tumultuous relationship, and Todd really got to see Toni for who she was. He didn't realize that the reason Toni was the way that she was, not that I'm giving her a pass, but Toni grew up, in her mind's eye, she was poor and she was scared. And hearing the fact that, oh, we've got this debt, there's a possibility that I could go back to being poor. Oh, hell no. So you guys know that Toni fumbled her marriage. And during that time, Toni ended up getting pregnant with their baby. I just feel like this whole relationship between Toni and Todd could have been spared had they actually sat down and had a conversation with one another to see if they even liked each other. Do I feel like they could have worked out their issues? I feel like they could have, but because they had communication barrier, they were unable to rectify their differences, which caused the demise of their relationship. Toni's toxicity and self-absorbedness most definitely gave her a bad rap. In some instances, I did feel that Toni was a bit misunderstood because she never really expressed her feelings. She was always blunt, but she never really just sat down and expressed her true feelings about why she was so blunt and why she seemed to have a hard exterior. And I really feel like that was because of the estranged relationship with her mom, who was an alcoholic. Toni did not know how to talk or how to effectively communicate because of repressed, I'm gonna say, emotions that she carried throughout her childhood. So she always had this fight or flight defense, and I feel like that caused the demise of her marriage. Remember, Toni went to therapy and she found out that she really did not know how to express love and to tie it with an emotion. And the thing is, she never really had the opportunity to sit down and talk to Todd about the severity of her childhood and how she probably never really expressed herself. And the moment that she did make a breakthrough in therapy, it was putting Todd second and actually putting Joan first. And that made Todd feel a certain kind of way. And, they never really talked about that. They talked around it. They talked at one another, but they never talked to each other. And then the other situation in the relationship was when Greg came back into the picture to make amends with Toni. Todd withheld the information from her. So Toni and Todd had a lot of issues that they never talked about. They jumped into their relationship so quickly. They didn't get an opportunity to get to know one another. And that was the reasons why I feel like they were not a good match. But Toni couldn't see the forest through the trees because she was looking at Todd being a plastic surgeon, and once again, the financial stability that comes with that lifestyle. So again, Toni was putting her feelings aside and more so thinking with her pocketbook and not having to worry about bills and worrying about having to struggle because she was married to a doctor. Toni had those issues with Todd where she didn't know how to be a wife, and she also could have been a better friend. There were a couple of instances where she played Joan and she did break the girlfriend's code. Remember the first episode, we were introduced to Toni, and Toni was seeing Joan's ex toe-sucking Charles, and because Joan told her it was okay, Toni felt that it was okay to date Charles when she should have known better. But again, because Toni was so self-absorbed and Joan never just sat her down and said, look, girl, that's not even cool. We're not even going there. We're not going to do that. You do not get to pick up my sloppy seconds and you need to learn how to be a better friend, and don't be trifling in that regard. The second time Toni did in fact diss Joan was when Joan had spilled the beans to Greg about Toni being engaged to Clay. Remember, after Toni pimp slapped Joan, Toni flew back to LA. Joan followed her, and when Joan got home, Toni was on her couch laid out in a trench coat and lingerie like she was about to sleep with Sean. So that right there, again, Toni, Joan, red flags in the friendship. Do I feel like their friendship, should they have continued the friendship? I'm gonna be honest, probably not, because for most women, that right there most definitely breaking the girl code, and that was the second time that Toni had crossed Joan. So I am going to make another video regarding the best friendship, and I say that with a question, of Toni and Joan. Were they really friends, or were they the best of frenemies? We're going to talk about that in the next video. So regardless of if you love Toni Childs or if you hate her, she most definitely is a memorable, iconic just figure in television, especially black sitcoms. Toni Childs will definitely go down as one of the most revered and just man-eating beautiful characters that you may love to hate. So okay, Petty Bunch, I need you guys to weigh in. How do you feel about Toni Childs? Was she misunderstood? Was she a gold digger, or was she a gold digger because she didn't want to be poor? So she did what she needed to do to live the lifestyle that she felt she was worthy of, and she never settled for less. So let me know what you think, how you feel. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe. Remember, liking my videos is a free way to support my channel. It also puts me in these YouTube algorithm streets and puts me in front of people who may not have known I was there in the first place. So thanks again, and I'll see you guys in the next one. The Petty One is out.